Welcome, welcome. This is the place for artists. Now, there are quite a few of you in here, and unfortunately, I feel like some of you need to check your schedules. And for those of you who realize you're in the wrong class and are packing up, let's get started with what you're going to need today.
The art supplies that you're going to need for this lesson is a piece of paper or something to write on, a pencil or something to write with, and an eraser or something to remove your mistakes. Now, I don't want you to get too caught up in the supplies. Anything that you have will be completely fine. You could use your iPad, you could use your cell phone, whatever you have on hand will be perfectly fine. So let's move on.
There are three main 2D shapes, just as there is three main 3D shapes. So what does 2D stand for? It stands for two-dimensional. That means it's flat. It has no volume.
So we have three basic shapes, the square, the circle, and the triangle. But before we get into those, we're going to first discuss how to draw lines.
This is movement of the wrist. This is movement of the shoulder and elbow. We will not be moving our elbow or our shoulder at all during this lesson.
Now, when it comes to learning how to draw curved lines, first let's put a few dots on our paper just to serve as some connecting points. And when you are practicing this, you're going to practice by only moving your wrist. Don't move any other part of your body. Therefore, you can see just how curved your lines are when you use your wrist.
Now, straight lines. Straight lines are made by not moving your wrist and focusing on using your shoulder and elbow to make that straight line.
So once again, we're going to have some dots on our paper, and a good way to practice your straight lines is really practicing the control of your wrist by keeping it really still. Always practice some air strokes before you put your pencil to the paper, and then you'll start to get better lines.
Okay, we talked about our first shape being the square. Now, just how do you describe a square, or how do you construct a square, right? So a square is a four-sided shape. And yes, I know polygons are four-sided shapes. There's lots of four-sided shapes. But when it comes to seeing the world from an artist's point of view, four sides equals a square. And we call it the elongated square. We don't use rectangles here, okay? Stop putting your stuff away. The lesson's not over yet. We're only 5 minutes in. Come on, guys. So, again, you can always practice those air strokes to improve those straight lines. So here, I'm gonna make a line, and here, we're gonna make a line. And then connect them down, and you have a square. Now we have my left hand, just to show my left hand's not as great as my right. This is no foolery. This is to prove that anyone can draw, even if your hand is never drawn before. The definition for the triangle in the artist world is three-sided shape. I'm going to air practice, and then now let's connect these two dots. This is a triangle-ish. Left hand's not the greatest. So a triangle, again, it's a three-sided shape. Who here knows how to draw a circle? Raise your hands. None of you, exactly. So let's talk about drawing a circle. Let me just demonstrate.
So as you can see, I'm talking about using your elbow and shoulder to keep your wrists steady and create straight lines, but this also ties to making a circle. So what you're going to do is you're going to air out to those circles and almost imagine your wrist making a circle, and then just put your pencil down and you'll start getting those circles. Now here I'm demonstrating with my left hand just to show you guys that your circles aren't going to start off really clean like my right hand is. You will have to overlap multiple times, and that's okay.
Let's do a quick breakdown. We learned today that squares are four-sided shapes, right? We learned that triangles are three-sided shapes, and circles are no-sided shapes. There are no corners, there are no sides. Before we move on to 3D shapes, it says if you want to know how to draw these types of mysterious shapes using basic shapes, then hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so you don't miss out on the next lesson. You may be asking, which thank you, smart one in the back, this stands for three-dimensional shapes. Three-dimensional shapes have volume to them. That means they're physical. You can physically hold the shape in your hand. To start, let's break down a cube.
When it comes to creating the cube is simply made up of 6 squares. It's a very simple shape, it's not very complicated, and when you overlap the squares, it creates a cube.
And let's connect them. Hey, can you stop throwing paper? Pull your paper out and do the lesson. Participate. Do you want participation points? Because I feel like you don't want participation points. I will call your mother. Now, this dot can serve to do many different things, but for now, let's take this whole square and replace it right here. Kind of looks funky, doesn't it? So now, to make this a three-dimensional shape, you need to connect all 4 corners. This is just many of the many ways that you can play around with a cube, but just so we can kind of see what's going on, we'll just throw some dotted lines to show the three-dimensional aspect of this cube. Cubes are made up of squares. So now let's break down a cone.
When it comes to creating a cone is simply a triangle and a circle or an elongated circle merged into one. We're going to start with an elongated circle, and then we're going to put a dot somewhere above the center of that elongated circle, and you're just going to create straight lines down to the corners or the sides of the circle. Once you're done with that, you can simply erase those inside lines and you have a cone. I like to practice doing these and put dotted lines just so I can see where the triangle meets the circle, and it just helps you also see it from a more three-dimensional perspective.
Let's move on to cylinders.
Now, cylinders are very similar to the cone in the perspective of connecting 2 shapes to create a three-dimensional one. You're going to be taking 2 elongated circles and a square or an elongated square to create a cylinder.
We're gonna start with our elongated circles. 2 elongated circles. We're gonna simply connect those down straight. What 2 shapes do you see here when you're looking at the cylinder? We have the square, which you can connect via little dotties, and we have 2 circles.
When it comes to creating the sphere, it is simply made up of 3 circles, and 2 of them will be elongated. Let me show you how it's done. Now, like I was saying, from the front view, it's very hard to see that it's a sphere. So we're going to turn it 3/4 so you can see it. Now, the wider that you make your elongated circle in the center, it's going to turn the sphere more. And the more narrow you make the elongated circle on the horizontal axis, it's going to determine how high or how low it's tilted. I've darkened the lines just so you can see it more clear, but of course I'm going to add those dotted lines at the back just to see the more three-dimensional shape.
Comment down below what you guys would like to learn next. Are there any questions that you have for me? I will be answering all of your questions down below. Well, at least I'll try to. I'm a busy woman, I have a kid. Before you guys go, there is homework. Find some man-made objects to break down. We won't be touching on organic shapes because they will be overwhelming, but don't worry, we will be breaking down how to draw heads from any angle next week. But for now, you can check out my drawing tips and tricks playlist. Right here. You can click it on the screen and see what else I have to offer.